Shoot it with a gun.
Yeah. All right. Might be recording this time. Let's double check.
Nerf gun.
Oh, it went up late. I just saw it. It went up late. We were live for a minute. Wait.
There, it's live.
We're live?
Woohoo! Yes.
Thank you.
All right.
We're back. Thank goodness. Oh my God. Technology, guys. Technology. I thought I was a little smarter than this. I guess I'm not. So, like I said, Richard Grant, we talked about him for a minute. Really good. Good tackler. Could be a great special teams guy. Good cover guy. Really has good ball production. All of that. Let's move on to these next couple guys while we still have it working. We brought up. Let's see if I can pull this up.
Kobe Bryant.
I know we brought up Bryant.
Yep.
And
Kobe Bryant from Cincinnati. What are your thoughts on him, Bobby?
School.
Yep. I heard he's going back to school right now. So let's if him and Myjai Sanders and Ritter, that's playmakers all over the place there for the AC and Luke Fickell.
Yeah. I think he's going to be a very good cornerback in the league. He is super physical, and I just like the way he plays. I can see him fit and then really well with a team like Baltimore and unfortunately New England. But I just think he's got that physicality that is really valued in a corner because he's going to be able to take those possession receiver guys and really push them. And I think he's going to be good against the run as well. He's just a physical player. I really like what he brings, and I think going back to school for the extra year is going to do tremendous things for the rest of his game.
Oh yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Zach. I don't want you to cut off. But.
You're all good. So Kobe Bryant, first off, elite name, very good name. Love the story behind it.
Strong name.
Is very good, but I like the guy on the other side of him even more. Ahmad Sauce Gardner, his nickname is really Sauce. Love it. Lengthy, really good press man. Cincinnati just put him on an island as a sophomore, and he played really well all year. I think he was missing. He was missing from that Georgia game, which really sucked for him. I think it would have been a great place for him to just show everybody in the country that this guy is up next. I mean, I'm telling you, the first time I put on a Cincinnati game, he stood out right away because his arms, he's got vines for arms. This man has length for days, and you love to see it.
It's funny. Mm-hmm. That's a good way to put it.
Oh, yeah. He's one of my favorite corners for next year. He's going to be a 2022 guy, most likely, because he's an underclassman this year. But he's a guy to keep an eye on for sure. Another guy you brought up, Bobby, is Quindell Johnson. And Roy, sorry if I cut you off. If you want to talk about Kobe Bryant, go right on ahead.
No, you're fine. The guy I want to jump in on was Aaron Robinson.
Okay.
I love what this guy did. He's like the Swiss Army knife. He kind of reminds me a little bit of the way Mike Hilton or Cam Sutton's used with the Steelers. Because he can play safety. Because he can play nickel corner. He'll play outside. He'll play outside. He's got great ball skills. He's feisty. He's not the best athlete. He's not the best athlete. He's never going to win. He's never going to win the race at the combine. The race at the combine. But he's just through and through. He's got that dog through. Those are guys that him. And those are the guys I gravitate towards. He's one of them guys you might get two. And he might have a spectacular career and way outplay that draft slot and be in the league a lot longer than a lot of guys that were drafted before him.
Definitely. Those guys with that dog in them are. It's one of the things I look for in a corner is if he's got that dog in him, he's willing to get up and be physical. Is not AAC, but JC.
Agree with that. Absolutely agree with that.
JC Horn is one of those guys. It's one of the reasons I love him so much. But anyways, there's one more guy you wanted to talk about, Bobby, and that's Quindell Johnson. What do you got to say about him?
He as a true freshman, played extremely well. He led a ton of categories for his defense, And I think he is going to be by the time he's able to come out. I was really surprised when I saw he was still so young. He made a huge impact this year, and I just think watching him grow as a football player exciting because I think he's going to be one of those names that you're going to keep hearing as he progresses.
Oh yeah, definitely. We love those young studs. It's why I like guys like Sauce Gardner, Quindell Johnson, Dylan Gabriel. Those guys, they're going to make a name for themselves. You got to keep an eye out for the AAC. And talking about the AAC as a whole, you brought up you think they should be a power conference. I'd love to hear your reasoning because I'm not sure I'm 100% on board on this, and I'll explain why after you bring up your points.
I think that the American Conference for the past 6 years at least has consistently had a team talked about for a New Year's six game, a playoff berth. We've had UCF for 2 years, Cincinnati this year. Always having teams that are in the conversation. And from top to bottom, they're just a very competitive league. And I think that gets overlooked because they're not one of the Power Five. SEC gets all the top to bottom conversation for a conference. But I think it's really underrated in the American. I mean, sometimes you see a team. Tulane, for instance. Their record might not be the best always. But I think they're a very good team. I think they always have players. We talked about today, and I think I'll compare the American to the Pac-12 quick. The past 4 years, you've talked about the American for a playoff berth, at least a New Year's Six game, and the Pac-12, I don't think you have. Look at this year. Of course, you can't really count. Everything this year because of the world. But when Oregon lost to Oregon State, you instantly said, well, the Pac-12's out of playoff berth. I haven't felt that way about the American Conference. Excuse me. In the past 5 years, and I think it puts them at a disadvantage. It puts all the five teams at a disadvantage, as a matter of fact. But I just really think it's time the American gets that respect and really needs to be looked at.
Yeah. I feel like the AAC does deserve respect. I feel like Group of Five as a whole deserves respect. I just think part of the reason the AAC isn't a power conference is, and the way I look at it at least, is money. Like that conference as a whole doesn't bring in as much money, but the Pac-12, the Big Ten, all those conferences bring in a lot more money for their programs than the AAC, so I think that's part of the reason they're not considered a Power 5. That's getting into like logistics and things like that. Talent-wise, I do agree as teams, they're the top end of that conference especially, can compete against most of these Power 5 teams. So it's not really a talent thing. I think it's more of a money thing that keeps them out of that Power 5 conversation for me.
It's absolutely a money thing.
Yeah. And then I think that also ties into the reason the college football playoff, something we're going to talk about here in a second, a little bit more. I ranted about it last week on the episode when I felt like Cincinnati and those teams got completely just disregarded from the conversation for no reason. I mean, they did lose to Georgia, but that's not a bad Georgia football team, and there was some bad clock management. But then you see what Notre Dame did in the playoff, and Clemson to an extent. They were missing their offensive coordinator. I think it affected them more than people want to admit. But overall, Notre Dame should not have been in that playoff. And while I don't think Cincinnati was going to win that football game against Bama, I don't think anybody really would have. That would have slotted in that 4 spot. I do think they could have been a more competitive just because they're more of an unknown quantity than Notre Dame, and I think that would have been more fun. But the ratings probably wouldn't have been there, so I think that influenced the College Football Playoff's decision, and that's part of the failure of the CFP committee as a whole, and something that needs to be fixed. And I went into this rant last week, but Bobby, if you want to expand on that, feel free.
Yeah. I think personally, I think Notre Dame did deserve to be in it. Just because their only loss was to Clemson in the ACC championship. My biggest problem, and I know again this year is crazy, but an Ohio State team that wins five games should not be in the playoff over a team that played a full schedule. You have a team like Texas A&M who played 10 games. Cincinnati ended up playing 10 games. And these teams performed week in and week out. Ohio State played five games. And I think it really showed. Look at how much fresher they were. I mean, defensively, I don't really know what was going on with Clemson, to be honest. But I just think when you saw their offense against that Ohio State defense, when I was like, well, you can clearly tell which team played five less games. And I just think, like you said, Zach, teams like Cincy and I don't think they would have got here. But look at Coastal Carolina was undefeated at the time. And A&M and just they're so teams that may not have been the most attractive matchup, but they deserve to be in there. And I think it was disappointing to me because when the playoff became a system, you thought, well, this committee has people from all over the country in various different roles, whether it's AD, a coach. At one point, Condoleezza Rice was part of the committee. So it was just disappointing because you have all these teams that if I played at a group of five team, I would be like, well, I know I'm never going to win a national championship. And I think even the Power Five schools don't make a playoff. Don't feel it's worth to risk their bodies anymore. Look how many opt-outs there were just for bowl games this year. Because what's the point? I think they're really devaluing these late season games. And I've always been a proponent to expand the playoffs, but I just think something needs to change. This year was delegitimized to me.
I feel like that's completely fair. Roy, do you have any thoughts on it? I'm curious to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, for me, the college football playoff, I'll give them better the system they had before. But in my opinion, it does need adjusted. And the way I would do that would be I would expand it from 4 to 6. And I would preface that by saying that the sixth team would go to that group of five type conference. Whether you would give another spot to one of the other conferences, like we're talking about Texas A&M and all these other teams that were up for debate. That would have been your fifth seed. The sixth one then you could almost put in was saying in a year that you had Coastal Carolina, BYU. Excuse me. Coastal Carolina, BYU. A lot of these other teams that are out there, either independent or group of five. Cincinnati would even be a part of it. That if they have the type of season that they had, they should be automatic fit for the sixth. In my opinion, you get the group of five almost automatic as long as there's one up to the certain threshold. They have to be undefeated. It can't just be like a 7-7 team or something like that. No, you're somebody's top 10 of the polls all year. You see the quality, and then you're rewarding those programs with some sort of. then some sort of reward not only for the players, for the programs that have been building themselves up. Because look at Coastal Carolina and BYU game. I think we could all agree that was one of the best games of the entire year. You mean to tell me?
I think absolutely.
You wouldn't. TV stations and networks wouldn't want to pick up like a BYU against say the 3 seed. Your big market teams that we know, the Alabama, the Clemson, that are probably going to be the shoe in 1 or 2 seed. They're probably going to get the buys, which that's fine. So you're basically going with an NFL style playoff where you get the two teams get a first round bye, then you have your divisional matchup, then your championship game. I don't see there's any downside to it outside the players that are going to be playing extra games. If you're talking about championship games, maybe eliminate one of the other games on the conference, out of conference style here. Maybe that's what it comes down to. But what would you rather sacrifice? The game up front or the opportunity to actually go for a championship? And if you have a Cinderella ride, you get into the college playoff and maybe you make it to the finals against one of these big time programs. You never know when it could happen. But that's the way I would solve that issue. Not saying it ever will happen. I think that would be the best possible way that you don't leave any teams out that are some of the best teams that's played the entirety of the year.
Oh yeah, definitely. I
like that idea.
I agree with that. I think 6 or 8 is probably the magic number. You don't want to go too much, because then you're just getting the teams in the teens that just can't match up well with teams like Bama or Clemson or Ohio State just because of the talent discrepancy. But I do think that 6 or 8 is the magic number there, with possibly a first-round bye for the first top 2 teams, and then you get teams that are really good like Cincinnati playing against teams like Notre Dame that I think would give Notre Dame a run for their money, just because Notre Dame's not very dynamic. They're not fun to watch on TV, if we're going to be honest here. So, in my opinion at least, I love good O-line play, but that's for the all-22. If I'm watching a game on TV, let me see dynamic playmakers out in the
field. Fireworks.
Exactly. Give me that Alabama-Florida stuff that's really just absurd and like fun to watch. But overall, I think we can agree AAC should get some more props for what they do year in and year out, putting good football teams on the field, competing against better conferences and even competing within themselves, because there are good football teams in the AAC.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel.
Oh yeah. So,
and we're talking about expanding playoff. If you look at starting with G1 AA, I think it's a
16
playoff.
I think it's 32. It's 16 or 32. I know D3 is 32.
D3 is 32.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. So over. Again, like you said, it comes all down to the money.
Mm-hmm. They make more money with the bowl games. It's just how it is.
Yep. With that having no player.
Yeah, it's a tough cookie to crack. You're breaking up a little bit, but it's a tough cookie to crack. Hopefully, they solve it at some point. Anyways.
I agree. Hopefully.
Yep. With that, Bobby, we've got everything we've wanted to talk with you about. Is there anything you'd like to plug before we let you go and have a good rest of your day?
I don't think so.
Right.
If you follow me, find me at Bobby Greco.
Absolutely. Everybody.
That's about it right now.
Make sure you follow this guy at Bobby Greco.
Roy, I hope.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Roy, I hope to meet you next week.
Bills and Steelers talk.
Buffalo Steelers rematch.
Let's do it. I'll have it. So hey, have a good day, Bob. Keep up the good scouting.
You guys.
Thanks for having me. It was our pleasure.
Best.
See you later.
Yep. Alrighty. All right, so looks like it's just me and you, Roy, now. So we're going to go ahead and get into what we plan to talk about. We might zoom through this a little bit because we have the technical difficulties going a little long. But we'll talk about Heisman winner, DeVonta Smith. Thank goodness. That's who I would have voted for. Dominant season, really great receiver overall. One of my favorites in the class. But, Roy, do you have any thoughts on the Heisman winner? Should it have been DeVonta Smith or should it have been someone else?
Absolutely. If they would have awarded it to Mac Jones or Kyle Trask or anybody over DeVonta Smith, I would have had to give them all glasses or ask them what they've been sipping on. This guy, if you watch college football, he was the most dynamic playmaker in all this year. So glad they got it right. Glad they didn't just stick to tradition and try to give to the quarterback. No, you gave it to the best player in college football. So I gotta tip my cap to them.
Definitely. I mean, and his awards speech after he said like his little speech about not being the biggest or strongest man, that being like not ever being the biggest or strongest guy myself. I'm done playing ball, so I don't know why it inspired me, but I was like, I'm ready to get back on the field. He's a fantastic story. Love seeing the support from his hometown, and I'm so happy he won the Heisman. He's going to be a guy I cheer for no matter where he lands in the NFL for years to come.
Absolutely. And I think he's somebody that this is going to propel him in his draft stock out of anything. You know, everybody's talking about Jamar Chase and his teammate Waddle, who's by all accounts, we're going to probably get to see him in the championship game. Not sure we're going to see him in a full amount of snaps because it's ridiculous he's even be able to get back to there. But I think this is really that springboard effect that I'm not going to say he's going to go top 5 like a lot of people were talking Jamar Chase. But he's going to be a solid first rounder, and he might outperform Jerry Jeudy and some of these other guys that's been in the same situation with him down there in that room, because it's been a embarrassment of riches. I don't know if you've seen the picture with all those 4 guys that was in the room. It's just Nick Saban knows how to recruit them down there.
Yeah, wide receivers. For some reason, he's just great at recruiting wide receivers. Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, and Amari Cooper. Now he's got Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs. Freaking DeVonta Smith and Jerry Jeudy. It's absurd the string he's had of really great receivers. But, I mean, I've heard...
And Mechie now.
Oh, and Mechie, too, he's coming up, and they've probably got some other guy in the wings that's going to be really good. It's just weird how good he is at recruiting that position for a side of the ball that he doesn't really coach. It's really funny. I guess he knows what he doesn't like to go against. But DeVonta Smith, I've heard reports... like bigger name people think he was the best guy in that room last year, and I'd have to agree. I mean, the stats show it. His performance on the field show it. He's the most dynamic. He's the best overall. I think he's the best player out of the 4 right now. I'd probably take Jalen Waddle before him just because I think Jalen Waddle can be a Tyreek Hill type of player, and we know, if you follow me on Twitter, you know that's the type of guy I value a lot, but I would not be mad at any team if they took DeVonta Smith first. Like, he's a fantastic receiver. Screw the weight. Screw the BMI talk. This guy is good at football, and that's what you need to realize. So, anyways, now that we talked about DeVonta Smith a bit, I could go on forever. I won't. Let's move on a little bit. We're going to talk about the bowl games, but since that took forever, all the technical difficulties and stuff, we're going to move on to the Natty, the national championship, the game for it all, Ohio State and Alabama. First off, who do you think is going to win, Roy?
I think it's going to be Alabama. As much as I like Ohio State and the absolute hands-down performance, all-time performance that Justin Fields threw out there for Ohio State in the game previously with the rib injury and the 6 touchdowns. I know everybody's like, oh, why are we talking Zach Wilson, number 2 quarterback, Justin Fields? I'm still not sold. Let me just go back to that. If you go back to the 3 games before, he had pretty poor performances. He got hung up on his first reads. It's kind of riding the wave of what everybody's watching. What have you done for me lately? But Justin Fields is an excellent quarterback. Don't let me knock you that far. I'm not saying he's not going to be a first-round pick. It's just, if it was me and I had my job on the line, I probably would take Zach Wilson. But Justin Fields, if he can put a W up against Alabama, against that NFL caliber of talent at pretty much across the board, I'm definitely going to be evaluating this tape. This is going to be one of the ones that's going to be going into the book here after it's done. I'll probably go back to it a number of times. And I think the whole Chris Olave coming back too, I think that helped with his performance a bunch. That's one of the reasons why he gets stuck on his first read, and if his first read's Olave, hey, it's all
exactly.
winner chicken dinner.
I mean, Olave is really good. He's one of the matchups we'll talk about here. We're not going to talk about all the matchups. I think Bama's going to win too. That offense is too much. Is going to be too much for that Ohio State defense. And honestly, it's just like who can score more. I think Alabama's going to score more. It's going to be a track race, I think, especially if Bama gets DeVonta Smith on Shaun Wade more than 3 times. It's going to be a track race. That's one of the matchups I actually really wanted to talk about. DeVonta Smith versus Shaun Wade, or whoever they put over him. Can anybody on Ohio State cover DeVonta Smith?
No.
Yeah.
No. And if it's Shaun Wade, it's going to be a bloodbath. I'm just saying, Shaun Wade. I understand why the coaching staff moved you to outside. That's a natural transition, but you, son, are a good nickel corner and stay in your lane, bro. Like, just stay what you're good at. He's not good at he did show a little bit of jam and press coverage last game, but it was ugly on some of the reps. And DeVonta Smith is not the guy you want to be trying to figure out your footwork and should I press, should I be off?
Yeah,
because you're going to be watching his taillights as he's spiking the ball.
I know. Yeah, if you get roasted by Colin Powell, and Colin Powell is not a bad receiver for Clemson, but if you get roasted by Colin Powell, I can only imagine what DeVonta Smith and possibly Jalen Waddle, if he comes back, are going to do to you. Because it's just going to be scary, man. I wouldn't be surprised if Shaun Wade's fakes a hamstring injury halfway through this game once freaking DeVonta Smith has 300 plus yards on him, because that's just the type of player DeVonta Smith is, and that's the type of talent discrepancy we have here. Shaun Wade was a first round corner coming into the season, but the tape he's put up, not great.
Not impressive.
Nope. I'm not sure how he became an All-American.
And to kind of flip the script on you here a little bit, Zach. On Alabama's secondary, Josh Joby has not been playing well either.
No, he hasn't. That's
the last few weeks. Mm-hmm. He's looked very conservative and very kind of remiss when he's playing with his back to the ball. He gets quite handsy. PS2, which I love your nickname you gave him. PS2, that's a different situation. He's hands down one of the best corners, but Joby might be the little chink in the armor there. If you get Olave on him, you might have 2 combating receivers here putting up big video game type numbers in this game. The one matchup I want to throw at you here quick, and we're talking about Ohio State's defense. We all know the linebackers; they go 4 deep basically with Hilliard now, but the defensive line of the Ohio State, especially the interior with Haskell Garrett and Tommy Togiai,
playing very well.
Excellent. And I think the injury that Landon Dickerson of the Alabama, I haven't heard. I think he's out. It's a knee injury.
I think he's out for this game.
That's going to be huge. I know it's a senior that replaced him, but it's not the same talent level. They have, Deontay Brown in there playing guard, but that center matchup with Togiai or Haskell Garrett, I think is going to be playing key because if Trey Sermon can get going, if Najee Harris can get going, those linebackers are going to be busy, and they're going to have a lot of red paint on their jersey.
Yeah, even when we talk about those linebackers and Najee Harris, we need to talk about them in coverage as well, because covering Najee Harris is not an easy task either. For how big he is, he's actually a pretty dang good route runner out of the backfield. So the OSU linebackers, I'm probably especially Baron Browning, because he's probably the best athlete out of the bunch, is probably going to have his hands full as covering him, because that's probably going to be his main assignment. And that's going to be a really fun matchup to watch. I think that overall, this is going to be a really fun game. Keep your eye on Mac Jones. I'm curious if they do manage to cover DeVonta Smith. I don't expect it, but I'm curious how he's going to do when he's forced to get off his first read and he's put under a little bit of pressure, because I think with how well this OSU defensive line is playing, their edges all the way to their interior defensive line, I think they might get a little pressure on Mac Jones, and how he responds to that is going to be really big for his draft status overall.
Yeah, if he can, he's kind of in the same boat as Justin Fields. If he can put up a dynamic performance, he's right there in the conversation we were talking earlier, that number 5 quarterback. Is he going to be a 5th quarterback in the first round? You go out and put out a convincing statement here. If he comes out, plays under pressure, delivers some NFL caliber passes against this defense, go long, long way.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So we know about that. we both picked Bama. Not really surprised there. I think they're probably the overall more talented team. I still think it's going to be a good game. I don't expect it to be a blowout, especially if one of the things that I loved Ryan Day, the OSU head coach, did against Clemson was how he paced his play calls and how they lined up and everything like that. It really got Clemson out of rhythm and got them in a lot of bad spots, especially against the run. I saw a couple tweets on Twitter where Ohio State's running their play, they're snapping the ball, and Clemson's still running from place to place trying to get to their spots. And if they can do that to Bama on defense, because Bama's usually very disciplined defensively, even if they're not as talented as years past, that's going to be tough for them, and it's going to make Nick Saban mad, and that's going to be really fun to watch. So
anytime to see Saban upset, it makes me happy.
Oh, yeah. So. That man could be up 35-7, and he'd still be upset about those 7 points. It's one of the reasons I personally love watching Bama, and I love watching Saban as a coach. So, anyways, we'll move to the next thing. We're going to make this quick. We're going to maybe talk about this a little longer because I like talking about my own work. Sorry, guys. I put out an 18-pick mock draft most recently. I think it was yesterday, actually. And
yep,
I decided I didn't want to go a full 32 because those last 16 spots aren't figured out. That last 14, I can't count. Spots aren't figured out yet. But we're going to talk about this. I'm going to read through them real quick, and then you can ask me some questions. You can pick some of your favorites, some of your least favorite picks. But all right, I had the Jaguars at number 1 going Trevor Lawrence. The Jets going Justin Fields. The Dolphins going Penei Sewell. Falcons going Zach Wilson. The Bengals going Kyle Pitts. Eagles picking up Micah Parsons. Lions getting Jalen Waddle. Panthers getting Trey Lance. The Broncos getting Patrick Surtain II. The Cowboys getting J.C. Horn. New York Giants getting Kwity Paye. 49ers getting Caleb Farley. The Chargers getting Christian Darrisaw. Minnesota getting Gregory Rousseau. New England Zayvon Collins. Arizona Rashawn Slater. Las Vegas Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. And Miami DeVonta Smith. So, what are some of your favorite picks? What questions do you have for me? I'm curious what you think.
Okay, so for me, one of my questions is, why did you take Fields for the Jets? What's your reasoning?
So, honestly, it's going to be a new head coach, new GM, and I do think there's going to be pressure from ownership to get a new quarterback. I think that's part of it. I think the ownership's going to be like, all right, we hired you. We're starting over. Well, not new GM. Sorry, Joe Douglas is still going to be there. But also Sam Darnold's not Joe Douglas's guy. Ownership's going to be like, we want a new quarterback. We want a new face of the franchise. Sam Darnold's not cutting it despite the lack of talent around him. So I think they pick Justin Fields. You always want it. I think this. I saw this point on Twitter somewhere. Why wait a year when you don't know what your draft status is going to be if you're going to be in the spot for a QB in 2022? Why wait a year when you know you're in a spot for a QB in 2021? So QB, while we overrate how much they do on the field, I think they're still the most important position on the field. So it's important to get your guy at that position. So that's why I had them pick Fields. I think he's the second best quarterback in the draft. I know you like Zach Wilson a lot, but I do think Fields is the second best guy.
Okay. Oh, well, I love your pick that you have at number 5 for the Bengals.
Yeah.
Kyle Pitts to the Bengals, even though I'm a Steeler fan, it's going to give me nightmares. Yeah. Joe Burrow having that guy and T. Higgins, 2 big monsters, and then Tyler Boyd across the middle. Love that pick. I think it makes Zach Taylor look like a genius overnight.
Oh, yeah.
Not so sure where we're going to see a tight end go top 5.
Yeah, that was the tough part.
I would be convinced that he might be the guy, like I always say, draft unicorns. He might be my unicorn. I take that high to make it happen. So that was one. Trey Lance to the Panthers. I know Matt Roll kind of came out and threw water at everybody saying Teddy Bridgewater ain't going to be the presumptive starter. He's got some work to do going into it. Do you think that has a lot to go with it here? And do you think Carolina could be a team with a new GM that's going to be also in tow here with Matt Roll? Could we maybe see them trading back here a little bit and maybe picking out that 5th quarterback range? If they like Teddy Bridgewater to be the interim, do you think if Desmond Ridder or maybe a couple guys come out like that, do you see them maybe taking a chance on that type of guy late in the first round?
I can see that. It's going to be 2 options there's totally 3 options, obviously, for every team, but I really do think that the Panthers are at like a very much next 5 years deciding pick here. This is a very important draft for the Panthers to figure out. And do they stick at 8 and take their chance there, see what they can get? Because they could go a couple different directions. They need a new corner. The corners they have on the roster just have not been cutting it very well. But you put a lot of draft capital in the defense last year, so the question is, how worth it is that? You could get an offensive tackle at 8. I don't really like the options there because there's not that top 10 talent at tackle for 8. I think you can trade back with, say, the Broncos. Hell, Broncos get maybe a couple picks if you're threatened. Trade back with the Niners, who definitely want a quarterback, and still get a guy like Christian Darrisaw in top 15 area. And it picks, or if you're deciding I want Zach Wilson or Fields if they drop. If the Jets and the Jags don't pick, if the Jets don't pick a quarterback, they could be like, I want a quarterback, I want that guy. They could trade up with the Dolphins. I actually have them as a trade-up candidate in the article because I think they could trade up with the Dolphins and get that guy that they want, that their team loves. If they love Justin Fields, they trade up, they pick that guy. So it's a really tough spot for them to be in. Since there were no trades in this mock draft, I didn't really feel like figuring out the draft capital and stuff. That's a lot of that's a lot of work, I'm gonna be honest. But I was like, if they sit here and land, and if one of the 4 quarterbacks falls to them at 8, I just cannot see them not picking their next guy and letting him sit, especially if it's Lance. Let him sit for a year, figure it out, learn the offense, whoever it is. I'm actually kind of curious if it's gonna be somebody else other than Joe Brady next year, because I heard he killed his interview in Houston. So I'm really curious about that, but I could really see them picking a quarterback at 8. And if they don't, then it's probably going to be a corner. But I really don't, actually, to go back to it, I really don't see them dropping back. I think the value at 8, at being at 8 and getting one of those really, really uber talented guys in that top 10 is way too valuable for a team that's growing right now and figuring itself out.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. Now, Las Vegas, you took Owusu Koramoah.
Yep.
Any thought to maybe going a pass rusher there? Because I know they've been struggling outside of Mad Max getting any sort of pressure. Did you ever consider Ojulari maybe even Jalen Phillips? Because I really love Phillips. Even though he has some big medical questions, that dude has some of the biggest upside, I think, in any of this class.
Yeah, I thought about it. I was more leaning back end. I think that you can get some talented pass rushers probably in free agency and stuff. I was leaning more back end or linebacker. That linebacking core is pretty weak. I know I can't remember his name off the top of my head right now, but they got a guy from the Rams, Corey Littleton, who's played pretty decently this year, but I think overall they're very weak in the linebacker core and at safety, and I think Owusu Koramoah gives them a guy that can do both. He might fall into that Isaiah Simmons bucket of being like, oh, he does too much, he doesn't do anything at very elite, and that worries me, but I know they need an impact player defensively, because Abrams, all their guys on the back end, and then their linebacking core just isn't getting it done. So I think Koramoah gives them that versatility there, and might be a good fit in whoever they bring in, if they run more of a 4-3 leaning towards 4-2-5 kind of defense, and Koramoah can lean into that strong safety / linebacker role if they have it there.
Yeah. And I want to compliment you. My favorite picks in your draft are the Dolphins out of both of these.
Yeah.
To come away with Penei Sewell, I know they took Austin Jackson last year, but Penei Sewell is hands down my favorite player in this draft. But DeVonta Smith then to follow it up to get back in that chemistry with Tua, outstanding. And the people that we're talking about dropping Tua after year 1 are absolute fools.
I just don't think it's happening.
It's not going to happen. I mean, look at Josh Allen. If people were going to dump him after the first year, look what he's become now. And I think people forget that Tua was also coming back from a devastating hip injury. Yeah. Like, we didn't even know if he was going to play this year, let alone starting games that were having playoff implications by week 17. So everybody take a little chill pill on Tua. Yeah. I mean, he's a dynamic player. And if you can get him a guy that he already has chemistry with, I mean, he had trash weapons out there. Not saying a lot for Devontae Parker. You know, there are quality people there, but they're not high-quality people as weapons out there. So, but to get Sewell and to get DeVonta Smith in this draft, I think Mr. Flores will be grinning ear to ear, even though he's going to have a new OC calling the plays next year because Chan Gailey stepped down.
Yeah, if the Dolphins can't find a trade partner for 3, because I think that's what they're going to be looking to do is trade out of 3. I think you can get value elsewhere and get more picks to build up that offense. There's no tackle at the level of Penei Sewell, though. So if you feel like Penei Sewell is your guy at tackle, if he nails all his interviews, if he shows up to if you talk to him and you're like, you know what, I love this guy, there should be no hesitation to walk up and take him. I don't say generational, because I don't think there's really generational, but he's a once every 5 years kind of guy. You don't see a guy like this with that athleticism, with that level of dominance in his first 2 years as a college player, other than every 5 to 10 years. They're very rare players. They're not generational, because that's a very broad term. We don't really ever see that in the NFL. But that's a guy, if you're there, you take him. And it also made the Bengals pick really hard, because I was like, if Sewell's not there, they're probably trading back to at least 8, because you can get Pitts at 8 probably. Yeah. But since there was no trade backs, I took Pitts. And then for 18, it was either between Jamar Chase and DeVonta Smith. And I personally like DeVonta Smith better, so that's why I went with him. I think Jamar Chase wouldn't be a bad pick there. I just don't know how well that fit with Tua's play style kind of thing, because I think he needs guys that separate very well. And I think DeVonta Smith is a better pure separator than Jamar Chase. I know I'm surprised more people didn't get mad at me when I didn't have Jamar Chase in any of these picks. But for me, it just didn't really cross my mind as, oh, this team would want Chase. Like, I was looking at the Lions. I was like, maybe Chase. They have a lot of receivers leaving, but they already have that kind of guy in Kenny Golladay. Or if they re-sign Marvin Jones, they already have those downfield jump ball kind of guys.
Galladay's a free agent too.
He is? Dang, I forgot about that. Well, Galladay's
a free agent too.
I wouldn't be surprised if they re-sign one of those guys.
For me, I think Detroit's the wild card in this entire draft.
Yeah, definitely.
I think they're going to be the team that's going to blow it up closer than it is taking a receiver at 1. I have a feeling we're going to see Matt Stafford traded after this year.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see a whole new regime. I think they're going to want to start fresh, new quarterback, everything along the way. So they might be a team that you watch that, pending the outcome of the playoffs, like the Colts. If Phillip Rivers, if they're not sure they're going to be able to be coming back with him next year, although he's played quite well for him, maybe the Colts go out and try to trade for Stafford, which would probably be a 1 because Stafford's still a high-quality player. I could see the Colts going after him, Denver Broncos. I think the Broncos would be an absolute awesome fit for Matt Stafford with those weapons that he has down there. I think he could wreak havoc with Tim Patrick, Judy, Hamler, and Fant. I think that's playoff-ready football with that defense. So you might see Detroit wind up coming in with 2 first-rounders this year with their original and whoever they may trade Stafford with, and maybe go up and get their quarterback they want if they're really, singled in on it. So don't be hung up. I love some of the picks you got. I actually love that Jamar Chase wasn't in the top 18 because I think me and you are kind of on the same wavelength. I think I'm kind of swinging more away from the big body, physical, late winning type pass catchers to the separating type after watching guys like Antonio Brown and Deontay Johnson just win with quickness and footwork over physicality. I think that translates quicker and longer than having to depend on physical stature.
Oh, yeah, definitely agree. And the Lions pick was a little bit selfish, I'm not going to lie. I just really want to see Matthew Stafford throw Jalen Waddle some bombs because he's not going to underthrow him. So that was a kind of a selfish one. One of my favorite picks that I want to point out is actually there's 2 of them. 49ers for Caleb Farley. I think that's a really good fit for Farley to grow and develop as a cornerback because I think he's all the traits. He's got tons of traits. I think he struggles a bit in press coverage. His footwork's pretty bad in press coverage. He doesn't really have the good eyes in press coverage for some reason. In zone, he struggles a little bit too. He's basically purely an off-man guy, which is good. He's elite at it, but it just won't fly in the NFL where guys win super quick. So that's one of my favorites. He can learn under Richard Sherman if he's still under contract there for a little bit, really make him to a great corner. And then Zayman Collins to New England is one of my favorites as well. We talked about it a little bit earlier in the show, but in one of the 4 different versions of this show. But Zayman Collins, I just don't think New England picks a receiver early, especially in a very deep receiver draft. And I think they go with a front and a front seven player because they really struggled there this year. And having Zayman Collins behind Dante Hightower or on the field with him would be a ton of fun. And I know Belichick loves those versatile guys.
I just think we should start a petition for the Patriots never to draft a receiver.
Yeah,
because they're terrible at it. I think they're better off, trading their pick to the Steelers and then having them trade them a receiver back. Because if you run down some of the lists of the Patriots receivers,
it's not great.
And even just the record of Pro Bowlers, I believe it's all pros that they've selected in the last 5 years. It's not a good trend for the Patriots scouting. But hey, better days ahead, as we all say here in 2021. So sun's coming up the next day.
All right. Any other picks you would have changed? Any other questions for you?
Nope. The only other one I want to throw out there is your Rashawn Slater to my Cardinals. I love the Cardinal pick. I think that kind of guy, whether it's guard, center, tackle, whatever it may be, they need to keep Kyler Murray clean. Yeah. So I'm sure Kyler would be grinning ear to ear to have that kind of guy, whether it's guard, tackle, whatever. Up front, keeping him clean.
Yeah, I think Slater probably slots best as a guard, and I think that's what the Cardinals really need on the inside. So I think him slotting in there would be really good for them, protecting Kyler, helping their run game out a bit more, and then giving Cliff Kingsbury some more security on that offensive line to run more of what he wants to run, because I don't think he was running his offense to the full capability he really wanted to. And we saw that, especially later in the year. And then, that's most of the picks I like. I like the Christian Darrisaw one. I think he's a really talented guy. To the Chargers, they need to protect Justin Herbert. Cowboys get some attitude on defense with J.C. Horn. And then the Eagles went to Micah Parsons. I don't know. I don't think they pick a receiver. They pick Jalen Reagor. I think they might stick with him. I don't think that's the right decision. I didn't really like Jalen Reagor, and I think they should probably look to pick a quarterback here. I wouldn't be surprised if they go quarterback. I know we love Jalen Hurts, but he's not played very good, and some of his flaws showed, especially in that Cowboys game late. So I really think they need to probably try out another quarterback, get that quarterback factory going again,
and if it's the interesting thing here is with Doug Peterson, are you convinced Hurts your guy?
Yeah,
because
I don't think
I'm sorry, Carson Wentz isn't your guy. And if you're not sold Hurts is, when's the next time you're going to be picking at 6?
I mean, if they stick with Hurts next year, so.
Well, but I mean, like, if you're looking at a guy, if you have Zach Wilson or Fields that gets an area, would you consider it? Would you consider going up to get him?
Yeah.
Get your guy? Zach Wilson in Philadelphia would just be, from somebody from PA, I wouldn't be able to stop hearing
about
people either complaining or loving it for a Philadelphia fan. So.
I also don't think they go Trey Lance. I know you're not supposed to scout the helmet. They're not the same quarterback, but I do think that Doug Peterson would not want to hear it from ownership, because we got to realize we talk about ownership like they know a ton about football, and these guys aren't dumb when it comes to football, but sometimes they're just people that have a ton of money that bought a football team because they wanted to make more money. And then they hire people that know about football to do these decisions and make those decisions and stuff. So I don't know what Eagles ownership is like. They're probably diehard, but he's probably going to feel that pressure. Don't pick Trey Lance. He's another North Dakota State quarterback. That didn't work out this time, obviously. So we'll kind of see what happens. I don't think they pick a quarterback unless it's somebody other than Lance, and I don't think anybody other than Lance falls to 6, because once again, quarterbacks are highly valued. They'll be gone by the 5th pick. I think the first 4 guys are pretty much guaranteed. First 4 teams, they're basically guaranteed to take at least 3 quarterbacks, because somebody will either trade into the Dolphins spot or the Falcons will pick a quarterback.
See, the Falcons I could see holding off for a quarterback, just because the amount of money they still have invested in Ryan and Jones. But you also make a good point, though, that you're at 4. If one of your main 3 guys drop there, you got to take him.
Yeah, if you really like one of those quarterbacks.
Yep, you're the next regime. They got a whole new GM. You're going to have a new coach. You almost have to. You'd be setting your franchise back if not, because of how old.
Because what if you overachieve next year? Ryan's old, but you overachieve. You manage to sneak into the playoffs as a wild card, and then you lose in the first round. Sure, it's not a bad season. You're in the playoffs, so we can count that as a success. You overachieved. But Matt Ryan could regress the very next year. and then you're screwed because you have no other option because you drafted too high to get a quarterback, and now you're terrible again. So I'd rather draft a quarterback, possibly overachieve or underachieve with Matt Ryan, and then cut Ryan when it's easier to do so, and then start the new guy after he's had a year behind a guy learning the system. Very much a Patrick Mahomes-esque situation, even though they're not the same caliber prospect.
Right. Absolutely. And, any good roster building team is always looking for that. I think that's one of the reasons why the Packers went out and got Love.
Yeah.
I think, even though Aaron Rodgers is probably going to be the MVP.
Yeah.
They're insulating themselves to the future. You don't know when that cliffhang is going to be right there. You don't know when it's going to happen. And the positive thing is, if you wind up seeing Jordan Love, or like in this case, the quarterback behind Matt Ryan, take off in the practices and everything the year prior to when you want to replace them, you're getting trade capital back then for them. Because a lot of these guys, Matt Ryan, I'm sure Kyle Shanahan would love a swing at Matt Ryan and his offense out there in San Francisco. Same thing with Aaron Rodgers. If something would happen to where it comes to the time to pay him an extension, you don't want to pay him because you're afraid he's going to fall off the cliff. You got a guy there in tow that you have a lot of confidence in.
Yeah, and the 49ers, by the way, if a quarterback falls to the 49ers, I'm like 95% sure they take one. Because they've said in vague terms that they're looking to upgrade that position. So I would not be surprised if Lance falls to the Niners, they'll grab him. And people are like, whoa, the Niners grab a quarterback? What about Garoppolo and his money? Shanahan's looking to win. Shanahan's a smart coach. He knows if a quarterback's holding him back, and I think Garoppolo's holding him back offensively. That's just he's obviously not going to say that out loud. He's praised Garoppolo, which is what he should do. You should not be throwing your QB under the bus in a press conference looking at Matt Rule, to be very quite honest. But but I think he's looking to upgrade there, and I think it's important for him to realize, hey, we can upgrade a quarterback right now at 12 without trading up, keeping our draft capital. We do it. Hell, he might even look, if he loves Zach Wilson or if he loves Fields like a lot and he thinks that's their guy moving forward for the next 10, 15 years, I wouldn't be surprised if he trades a whole shit ton of picks for that.
I'm actually going to go on a limb here, Zach. I'm going to be surprised if Garoppolo is their quarterback next year. I don't think he's coming back. I know he has the no trade clause in his contract there, but that can easily be massaged, especially if you give him some say where you're trading him. And I think none other than New England is going to be calling Shanahan, because I think Shanahan knows Belichick didn't want to get rid of Garoppolo. They already basically said New England that Cam Newton is not going to be coming back. And that, I just have a feeling Belichick is going to get what he wants. He wants to try it his way with Garoppolo, whether it's right or wrong. I'm tending to say it's wrong. I think we've seen his shortcomings in San Francisco, and I think Shanahan's going to pick up the phone and say, hey, why don't you flip me a day 2 pick for Garoppolo, and then they use some of that ammunition to go up and get a guy they want if they don't sign one, because that's another opportunity if Stafford comes available. I think Stafford in San Francisco would be interesting, or Atlanta, if the new GM does want to blow it up somewhat. I know it's very, it's not cap-wise to entertain a trade for Matt Ryan, but could happen.
It could.
I mean, the numbers, we always know that the salary cap is a myth. If you want something to happen, you can float dollars into different ways to make things happen. So
I know that 49ers are a team that it's really tough. I think I'm going to have a little bit of a hot take here as we kind of start to close out the show. But honestly, what does Garoppolo do better than Cam Newton right now? I don't think there's a whole lot. I know it might seem a little bit hot, but I just don't think that he's that much better of an option. If we're going to be honest, I'd rather have Cam Newton on a very cheap deal than Garoppolo on his massive deal and trading draft capital. I know Cam Newton wasn't the best, but I do think the system that was handicapped by bad skill players, and then the bad skill players themselves definitely didn't help. And then COVID and all that stuff. I'm not trying to put excuses. Cam Newton wasn't at his best, but there was still flashes of him performing very well. There's still a chance that, hey, you give him one more year at a cheap contract. If it doesn't work, you're in position to get a quarterback next year. I mean, hell,
yeah, absolutely.
And there's other guys you can take a chance on. You could draft a guy in the second round or third round to see what you get for their quarterback. You could draft a guy like Mac Jones, even though I wouldn't suggest that. If you're drafting a later round quarterback, you should probably go for more of the arm talent and all of that. So try to get maybe a Desmond Ridder if he's available. A Kellen Mond is a guy that would be maybe interesting. A Jamie Newman. Guys like that with the talent that are pretty raw. Might as well take a shot on them rather than trading for Jimmy Garoppolo or somebody that's not a very known factor when your team's definitely not built to win right now.
Absolutely. And you were talking about Cam Newton there. I don't think Cam Newton's done. I think you made a great point. The system really handicapped them, and even more than that, it was the playmakers around him. Who was he throwing the ball to? Yeah. I mean, there was nobody there on a consistent basis. I would love to see Cam Newton go to Washington if Alex Smith don't come back. Him and if you put a Cam Newton in an offense with Antonio Gibson, Terry McLaurin, and that kind of guys, Logan Thomas, who's really came on as a tight end, I think that would be an intriguing fit for a cheap deal. Yeah. Maybe you go out and get a guy to forget the ghost that was Dwayne Haskins.
Yeah, I mean, and while I would hate to see Cam Newton cursed with Ron Rivera again, I'm very mediocre on Ron Rivera as a coach because of what he did in Carolina. He's more of a locker room and player development guy. But, man, his game time decisions are rough. He's very hot and cold of when he's aggressive or when he's not. So I'm iffy on Ron Rivera as a coach overall, just based on my experience watching him in North Carolina. But I understand he's better than some of the coaches out there, so I understand why Washington hired him. But, yeah. I mean, Terry McLaurin would be the best receiver since an old Steve Smith that Cam Newton's played with. I'll say it right now. Right. So I would love to see that. Alrighty. Well,
I think we did a pretty good job, buddy, making it through the waves.
Yeah, I know. We've made it. We're starting to lag out a little bit here, but hey, we're making it through. We made it. And we're going to go ahead and finish out the show. I'm Zach Gartin. You can follow me at all22addict _addict on Twitter. You can look at my articles on Blitzalytics. I just did that top 18 mock draft. I put Twitter clips out all the time. Roy, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me at PreacherBoyRoy. It was a great time here, Zach. I'm glad we were able to get Bobby on here. Thank you guys for episodes here. But, hey, we're glad that you came to view it. I'm glad we enlightened you with some more draft topics, and we'll get back to seeing you next week.
Absolutely. Next week, we're back Wednesday, same time.
Stay humble, be a blessing.
Absolutely. Stay humble, be a blessing. Same time. Hopefully less technical difficulties. We're still ironing this out, but we should be better this time. This last part of the stream should be what you expect next week. All righty. Thank you, guys. Blitz out.